My name is Savannah Pyatt, and I have created and I will be presenting my project, Climate Change versus Landscapes. My first example of a global impact is rising oceans. According to NASA, this year they have talked about how sea levels are rising due to melting ice caps and seawater expansion. So basically, the heat from the sun coming down, it will be melting the ice caps, which will then add more water, obviously, because ice is not as dense as water. Um, so we'll be adding more water to the ocean and increasing the sea level. And seawater expansion, basically the same way that molecules would work, like in most things, when they get hotter, they expand. They get colder, they shrink. So, seawater expansion in the ocean is obviously taking up more space than if it were all ice. Um, and NASA had said since 1993 there has been a 96.7 millimeters sea level increase, and to the left is the figure that they had put on their website that shows the increase and what had caused the sort of increase. Like most of it is ice sheets, mountain glaciers, Greenland ice, Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets, thermal expansion, mountain glaciers again, and then global dam projects is what has taken it down. Um, and there's that little red line, which is satellite data versus the majority data that they have taken. They started using satellites between 1980 and 2000 to collect better data. So my next example of a global impact is mountains, and majority of that if of my topic is flooding with mountains. So that's why I put that picture to the right. That is flooding caused by just an abnormal amount of rainfall, but all the mountains are pushing it down rather than if it were all flat, it would all be an even amount of rain. But since there's a lot of mountains surrounding this city, all of the rain went directly down and obviously caused a lot of damage. So, according to Science Daily, they had said the research shows how climate change will negatively impact on mountain landscapes and human activity. This includes an increasing risk of hazards such as avalanches, river floods, landslides, debris flows, and lake outburst floods. Sorry. These are made worse because of glacier retreat and permafrost warming. Alpine ecosystems and endemic species are already threatened, with local extinction, and mountain slopes are becoming greener as lowland forests spread to higher altitudes. So basically, like I was saying, that most of the rainfall on the mountains are just all running off the mountains and going down, but also any snow or ice that's on the top of the mountains getting melted is coming down. So it's just going to add to big floods down at the bottom of the mountains and into the valleys that would be down there. Bringing that kind of as an example of something that I know about is back home in Gatlinburg, 400 people had to evacuate in about, I think it was 2021, 2022, due to flooding. There was 8.5 inches of rainfall, and all the flooding, it flooded the Little Pigeon River that it like runs through Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. And I just wanted to use that example because that was something that I know of. But yeah, 400 people had to evacuate due to that. There was some damage, but there were no deaths. No one was lost or anything like that. But still, that is just one example that I know of that I thought I would add. First regional impact example, I used droughts. So most of this information, if not all of this information, I got from a website called Drought and Climate Change. So I picked the U.S. Southwest region to kind of focus on because there are quite a bit of regions. So I just thought I'd focus on one to kind of make it more personal, I guess. Um, so the U.S. Southwest region actually has the most extreme and long-lasting regions in the U.S. The Southwest region has the most extreme and long-lasting. Kansas and Oklahoma have the most extreme. Nevada, Michigan, Idaho, North and South Dakota, Texas, Louisiana, and Rhode Island have the most long-term droughts. So I also added two quotes from Drought and Climate Change because just the way they put it, I couldn't put it any better. So the first one is warmer temperatures enhance evaporation, which reduces surface water and dries out soils and vegetation. This makes periods with low precipitation drier than they would be in cooler conditions. So the way droughts that can affect the US is what comes to mind is crops. I mean, I know it says vegetation, but crops is the first thing that comes to mind. We have a lot of like corn and just so many different vegetables to think of. So, thinking of corn because that's around here in Tennessee. We make our farmers make a lot of money on their corn crop. So, if we were one of those states, Tennessee being one of the states, um, we would not be able to make good money. We might actually have less farmers because it's a hard thing to. I mean, you can't really fight a drought. It's really hard. So we might end up getting less farmers because of that. Obviously, Tennessee is not one of those states that was on that list, but just as an example, because that's what I know. The next quote I put was Southwestern United States has already seen a decrease in annual precipitation since the beginning of the 20th century, and that trend is expected to continue. So climate change is causing less precipitation, and like they said, it's expected to continue. So, I mean, we might lose a lot of our farmers across the U.S., and it might be harder, and that might end up being an economic impact because of droughts. So the last regional impact that I picked as an example was hurricanes or cyclones. Um, they're regional because they usually occur in the North Atlantic, Northeastern Pacific, the Northwestern Pacific, and the Southwestern Pacific, and also the North and South Indian Ocean regions. I got almost all this information from a website called Center for Science Education. So a quote that they had on there that thoroughly explains all of this is regions of the world that are already prone to tropical cyclones, also known as hurricanes and typhoons, may see more impacts from them in the future. These storms derive their energy from warm ocean water, so their winds become more intense as sea surface temperatures warm. Hurricanes are also able to carry more water vapor in a warmer climate, causing more rain, which can cause flooding when they make landfall, which goes back to my first point, flooding. Also, flooding from storm surge during hurricanes will wash further island and sea level rises due to climate change. And the other points that they added was due to climate change, not only will hurricanes possibly get worse, but the seasons can become longer. So hurricane season will be prolonged, or they can even shorten. So it's really a toss up on that part. But they can also occur in new regions. So what they had put on their website is mainly on the latitude lines. So they can go more north, more south. It didn't say anything about longitude lines, but I would assume they're not likely to move on the longitude lines because, I mean, you can't really have a hurricane like in the middle of the United States with no ocean. So I would assume that that's the latitude lines is where they would most likely stay. Um, Something else to add is that recently we had hurricanes in Florida and they moved all the way up to North Carolina. I know that's more normal for us, Maybe it wasn't lately. Maybe that is a new thing. And lastly, these are just the citations that I got for this project. Thank you for listening.